Are unhealed people actually broken? That's the question that I'm going to explore in today's video. And specifically, I'm going to utilize psychoanalytic theory and Freudian psychology to explore this. Psychoanalytic theory involves the id, the ego, and the superego. This is everything that a person develops and experiences throughout their entire lifetime, starting from a very early age, birth. Right? The very first thing is the id. That is the all or nothing survival dynamic. Then, after a while, comes the ego state. Then the superego develops after a while as well. The fascinating thing is that as I've been on my journey of healing, what I've been looking at is this idea of any given individual being considered broken, as if there's something wrong with them. I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with anybody. What I would say is that some people are raised in survival, severe survival even. Other people are raised in healthier childhoods. And let me make it very clear that there is no such thing as a perfect childhood. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. Every parent fucks up. Every child comes out of childhood with some level of trauma, some level of scathing and marring. But the fascinating thing is this idea of being broken. What do I believe it means based on what I've learned? When an individual is raised in survival, when they are raised in exceedingly traumatizing dynamics, that mars and scays their ego state, leading them to develop in a way that has them operating and attracting dysfunctionally. Imagine this. Somebody's ego state. Imagine if you were to take a knife and you were to slice it in a certain way. Consider that trauma, right? You're taking the knife and you're like, it's like, oh God. Okay, there's this gash in their ego state. There's this gash in the bubble. And that oftentimes affects boundaries. Let me talk about something that is very important to fully understand what it is that I'm talking about here. The healthy triad of childhood. This is not fact or truth. This is just something that I believe is helpful to understand the difference between a healthy childhood and an unhealthy childhood. What I like to call the healthy triad, healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation, affects an ego state. And the fascinating thing here is that not everybody gets healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation in childhood, in what would be considered a healthy or healthier childhood, by parents that understand healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation. You're not going to get what it is that your parents didn't get. If your parents were emotionally unhealthy, if they lacked healthy boundaries, if they lacked individuation, and they lacked differentiation, the likelihood that you're going to get that is very low. It wouldn't make sense that you would get that because they didn't get that and they wouldn't know what it is to pass on to you. Intergenerational trauma would be the only other, maybe not the only other thing, but that's like second in line. People that understand, I should say parents that understand healthy development are likely to pass on that healthy development to their children. Parents that haven't even taken the time to look at themselves in the fucking mirror probably don't know it. I mean that metaphorically. I mean that in terms of introspecting and taking the time to actually look at yourself. The only reason that I would see, or I should say the reason that I would see that unhealed people are broken is because in terms of what clinical psychology presents as the healthy model for an individual is not present for an individual that is unhealthy. Any individual that did not get healthy boundaries, that did not individuate and did not differentiate, they're going to live an exceedingly different life from an individual that did get healthy boundaries, that did get individuation, and that did get differentiation. Somebody that got healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation are far more likely to be independent. They're far more likely to know who they are. They're far more likely to carry out healthier relationships. They're far more likely to, without a doubt, walk away from individuals that are unhealthy. That's the way that it works. So, what is life like for somebody that is quote unquote broken? Or in this case, I'll just use the word unhealed, because there is a difference between being traumatized and being unhealed and being healed as well, and then also just actually having a healthy or healthier childhood. People that are unhealed, they have these massive gashes in their ego state, and they're fucking bleeding out. So what is a metaphorical example of that? Having either exceedingly unhealthy or maladaptive defense mechanisms that really fuck up their capacity to live a decent life day to day. Take, for instance, the person who projects all of their shit onto other people. They lack healthy boundaries. If they had healthy boundaries, they wouldn't project their shit onto other people. What they would do instead is take their stuff back on themselves, have boundaries, and probably work through it in therapy. But no, instead, they lack healthy boundaries and they are bleeding out everywhere. They're bleeding out onto other people. They're not conscious of what it is that they're doing. They're not conscious of their dysfunctional, abusive behavior. And they behave awfully. I'll say it for what it is. Projections are unhealthy. Confusing somebody else with your shit because you lack healthy boundaries and projecting your shit onto other people, bleeding all that stuff out onto other people, is unhealthy behavior. And in regards to Freudian psychology and psychoanalytic theory and the model for an actual healthy individual, that is abnormal. It's not normal. It's not normal to be projected onto. The funny thing, maybe not funny, but the reality is that a lot of unhealthy individuals that lack healthy boundaries do that. So, could we consider it broken that somebody fucks up their relationships because they lack healthy boundaries and they project their shit onto other people rather than having the vulnerability and the self-introspection to, in a private space, deal with that stuff rather than giving it to everyone else? I'm going to call it for what I believe it is. I'm not claiming truth or fact here, but I think that's a broken fucking thing. I think it's totally fucking broken. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. Maybe you've heard people say to you, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" No, it's not about that. What I see it as more so is something. Take for instance a toy, right? If a toy is put together properly, it fucking functions properly. If a toy is broken, if a toy is ripped to pieces, it's not going to function properly. Take a car, for instance, right? Put four wheels on this object and it goes in motion. If you take one or more of the wheels off of it, it does not go in motion. It might go and then it stops. It might go and then it stops. We could look at people in the same way. If you raise a child without healthy boundaries and you fuck them up exceedingly, you fuck them up with your shit as a parent, they're going to be in a lot of pain for starters, and because they lack healthy boundaries, they're going to project that pain onto other people and fuck up their relationships. So you could look at it and say, they're broken. They don't function properly. Because if they did, they wouldn't project their shit onto other people and fuck up their relationships. I've seen people fuck up their relationships. It's sad. It's sad to see people that lack healthy boundaries, that choose to project their shit onto other people because they lack healthy boundaries, because they lack individuation and differentiation. It's sad. It's sad. So I have the standard of Freudian psychology's psychoanalytic theory in considering that an individual that lacks healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation is considerably, I mean, if you don't want to use the word broken, I'll go with dysfunctional. It doesn't function according to the healthy standard. That's the way that I see it. A children, a child could have had healthy boundaries, individuation, and differentiation, and have been a healthy, boundaried, confident, independent individual that carries out healthy, even exceedingly healthy relationships. But they don't, because they didn't get the healthy boundaries and the individuation and differentiation in childhood, and therefore they are bleeding out. By the way, when I do this, I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm kind of trying to visually represent the metaphor of bleeding out. You're throwing your shit onto other people, and they are your screen, and you're fucking up your relationships because you're calling somebody else what you are, or not what you are, but how you feel about yourself. Whenever somebody's indecent to you, it's how they feel about themselves. These are the people that lack healthy boundaries. I mean, as long as you weren't indecent to them first. You ever find yourself in a scenario with someone where they're like totally rude to you and you didn't do anything, and you also lack healthy boundaries, so now you're confusing whatever they said to you that is actually their shit with your shit? People that have healthy boundaries don't get caught up in that stuff because they're like, oh wow, you're just a broken individual. You're a broken little boy or a broken little girl. You were stagnated somewhere in childhood because that's when your trauma happened. You're just in pain and you're projecting all of your pain onto me. Seeing it for what it is. One of the most important things that I present on this channel is seeing everything for what it is. Because if you don't see everything for what it is, you're going to be distracted and confused by what it's not. If somebody lacks healthy boundaries, I'll end off with this. If somebody lacks healthy boundaries and they project their shit onto you, that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. If you don't see it for what it is, if you don't see it that way, you're going to be confused by what it's not. And what it's not is having anything to do with you. So are people that are unhealed broken? Are people that are not doing the work on themselves broken? Well, if we really want to avoid the word broken, what I'll say instead is that according to clinical psychology, Freudian psychology, psychoanalytic theory, the standard of health, they do not function properly according to that model. I'll say it that it's not proper to lack healthy boundaries and to project your shit onto other people, and therefore with that ruin your fucking relationships. Not a good time in my opinion. And anybody else that has dealt with that has probably also not had a good time either. Not had a healthy time. Healthy is the standard. Anything that goes below that is to look at and question and become curious about and be like, broken? I don't know. You lost a wheel there, bud. You lost two. Actually, you got three of them slashed, and now you're having a hard time moving forward. What do you do about that? Oh, you're going to project your pain onto other people? That's sad. Looks like you lack healthy boundaries. Oh, you're going to be overly dependent on other people? Looks like you lack individuation and differentiation. Looks like you lack a clear understanding of personal responsibility. Looks like your development was fucked up. If we don't want to use the word broken, it's clearly dysfunctional. It doesn't function. It doesn't move forward. It is stagnated. See it for what it is.